Hello, the learning objective of this lesson is to understand the main idea of the Great Depression of the 1930s so that we may appreciate the lessons that the historical event can teach us about our lives and how the event still affects us today. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Great Depression today. And here we have some visual representation of the Great Depression. This is President Hoover, begins with President Hoover and ends with President Franklin Delano Roosevelt or FDR. And we see images here that people are hungry. Okay, there's the soup line, the food lines, people trying to get food in the food bank. You see a lot of people homeless in the street. Here you see this famous picture of a woman in desperation with her children. People asking for jobs. There's a lot of unemployment, and the environment is destroyed during the Great Plains. Okay, so those are some visual images of the Great Depression. Okay, so the national standards we're going to be addressing is the Common Core Standard 2, which is to determine the central idea or information of a primary or secondary source. We will be doing both. The California standards is 11.6. Students analyze the different explanations of the Great Depression, how the New Deal fundamentally changed the role of the federal government. So right now we're going to do the first part, which is the Great Depression. Then we'll do the New Deal. And we're going to do all the depth of knowledge, the one, the who, what, where, when. Depth of knowledge, two, the cause and effect. And three is cite, construct, and appraise. And also four, which is your evaluation of the Great Depression. So what you would do is you're going to answer this question, okay, which is what do you know about the Great Depression? What is the main idea? So here you just write a quick summary, the who, what, where, when, and how. And here, number two, I want you to hypothesize by putting yourself in that situation. What would you do if you lived in that time period? Okay, if you could go back in time, what would you change? If you could interview a person, or you're going to describe the life, or who do you feel sorry for? Who do you empathize with? So you could answer any of those questions. So these are some great videos I found. This is the life of Mexican Americans during the Great Depression. It's quite interesting to see how many people were deported. Some Mexican Americans uh, didn't even know Mexico and they were deported to Mexico. Sometimes the deportations were not voluntary, even though the history books say that. You have many primary documents from Mexican Americans saying that that wasn't true. I remember reading about a little girl who came home and couldn't, she came home from school. She was 8 years old. And first of all, no one went to pick her up at school. And she was wondering where her parents were. Her parents were deported when they were at work. So you have, this is quite interesting. You could look at this video if you want, or you could look at everyone, but just, you could pick one, or you could, if it's interesting, look at all of them. It's nice to have knowledge of everything. This is how the life of African Americans um, changed during the Great Depression. So we see, of course, a pattern of discrimination and this whole, a competition for jobs. And here we have the farmers, how they lived during the Dust Bowl, where this huge dust came over the Great Plains because they overworked the land during World War I. So we have that consequences and how horrible that life was. And here are people reflecting. I think it's from the 80s, but they were reflecting, much older people. They were older, but they were talking about when they were young in the 1930s and how their life was different because of that. And of course, here you have links to the AP document. So you could pick whichever one you want. And then just tell me, how would your life be during the Great Depression? Okay, from your own research or from any of these videos or documents. Okay, so the third question I want you to answer is, what does this remind you of? Okay, how is it in use? Why are we studying it? How is it related to today? And unfortunately, today with COVID-19, there's a lot of um, co-relationships with that. I mean, we see a lot of examples, rather, of how the Great Depression, how we're living uh, some common threads with people who lived during the Great Depression in terms of the unemployment, the food line, people on long lines to get free food. So it's there's a lot of things, and we'll hear more about the things we have in common with the Great Depression. Okay, and then four, and just any questions you have. What do you wonder? Um, any questions you have, and I'll answer it. Okay, so let's start. So this is what I basically want you to do. So you're just going to watch the video, and then you're going to answer these four questions. Okay. All right. Here's some more instructional videos. This one is from the History Channel. I know they sometimes have college professors, but sometimes they don't use credible sources. So it's fine. You could just listen to any video, and um, and you could ask me, Miss, is this true? So any video is fine to get you an idea. All right. So the WHO, we have the president was Herbert Hoover from 1929 to 1933. Okay, and this is Herbert Hoover, and I got a quote from him. Okay, blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt. So here's a thing. Herbert Hoover was Republican, and Republicans um, do not like to, they don't believe in increasing the national debt for the help, for the sake of social services. They believe the government is imposing on your freedom if they tax. So the power to tax is the power to destroy. And we see that common theme throughout history. Even with Jesus, that was the whole thing, that the Roman Empire were overtaxing the Jewish community. The American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Latin American Revolution, all they had to do with the government overtaxing people and enslaving them. So you do have that idea here, where Herbert Hoover believed that no, it's not the government's job to tax people and to provide social services. So it was very much laissez-faire, keep the hands off. And this is another quote I liked. Older men declare war, but it is the youth that must fight and die. Okay. So very different from Herbert Hoover. As I mentioned before, when the economy is good, people tend to vote Republican because they feel that the government should not, they don't need the government's help. So, don't tax me, I'm doing fine. And then when the economy collapsed, people tend to vote more Democratic. So here we have Franklin Roosevelt was the president from 1933 to 1945. He served many, many years, as you see. He After him, we have an amendment that says you can't serve more than 2 terms. So 8 years as president, because as you see, he served 3 terms, and he would have served more if he had not died during his last term. Okay. And his famous quote, which many people use, okay, the only thing we have to fear, it's fear itself. So he took a very different approach than Hoover. Hoover was, his mentality, what like many Republicans, is the government should not get involved in people's lives. Okay, that's not the government's job. The government's job is to take care of the military. Where Democrats tend to think, no, we need to provide social services, we need to help people. That is the job of the government because the taxes come from the people. So the taxes should go to help the people. So many times he will go on and fire chats on the radio. Remember, 1920s, you have the radio, the invention of the radio, and what have you, or the radio became popular rather. He would come on, and people would say, "Well, how do you know it's going to work? Your ideas?" And he would say, "Well, I don't know if it's going to work, but we cannot let fear stop us from trying new things." So that's his quote. So those are the WHO. So what is the Great Depression? The Great Depression is the time when the U.S. experienced great economic hardship. Okay. And here you see an image. You could see the mom is completely distressed, and there were many people died of starvation during this time. And you see people looking for jobs, and this is quite interesting. So if you see these guys here, they look very well dressed because remember the 1920s, there was that whole prosperity and overspending. So in the 1920s, you have people asking for jobs that, are driving Rolls Royce and having fur coats on the food line. So they look nice, but they're broke because of the economy collapse. So when in 1929, when the stock market crashed, until 1939, when World War II started. Okay, so we're going to get into the causes of why the Great Depression right here shortly, where the entire United States was affected by the Great Depression. It wasn't just the United States, it was a worldwide economic depression. So over the world, kind of like COVID-19, it's not just affecting the US, it's affecting the whole world. So why did this happen? So it's important that we learn the causes of why the economy collapsed, because when we learn what caused the problem or the root of the problem is, we learn about, well, what are the solutions? What can we do? Okay. So one of the first causes of the Great Depression was consumer debt. Okay. So since many electronics were invented in the 1920s, many Americans wanted to buy refrigerators, blenders, vacuum cleaners, etc. Also, Ford made it possible for the working class to own a car. So remember, I told you that before Ford did not invent the car. Many people say that incorrectly. Okay, the car was invented way before, but it was only for rich people. So you would go to a cars market and or a car dealer, and they would measure you, and then they would build a car based on your measurements. But Ford said, well, we could just make mass production of cars. So you see here, okay, that this guy is in charge of doing one part, and another guy is in charge of putting the other part, and the cars are being mass produced. You see like a conveyor belt here, an assembly line. Okay, so yes, so he was the first to invent an assembly line to make cars. He also made adjustable parts so that cars can be used by uh, different sizes, right? People of different sizes. So yeah, so if you go into a car, you could always put the car seat closer or back. You could fix your mirrors and what have you. So all that is, he was the one who did that. Okay. So to make all this new invention affordable, we had businesses did installment plans. Okay, where they could make monthly payments. So what I put here, or what I wrote here. Okay. So this is a primary document, and we see this advertisement here. So it's a vacuum cleaner, and all you have to do is put $2 down, and every day you pay $3 a month. So the cars, the electronics, all these things, these appliances that were made popular because of the electric plugs, took place in the 1920s, and people just went crazy buying everything. So what happens? And this is something in common today. So after you paying your bills, many Americans realized that they overspent. It was difficult for Americans to pay the bills for the items that they bought using the layaway plans with store credit. So when you create a budget, okay, this is the last class you learn about economics, how to create a budget. It's very important. So you see here, oh, you have to pay your electric bill, your phone. Well, back then they didn't have phone, but grocery bills. And then when you add up, you're like, oh my goodness, I have to make sure that I make what I'm spending. Okay. So the first cause was that people overspent. They were buying too many things, and then they were not able to pay their bills. The second cause of the Great Depression was that banks went bankrupt. And how did that happen? Okay. So what I wrote here is since many businesses were doing great, people wanted to invest in business, and many businesses required bank loans to open businesses, such as appliance stores, and banks were just lending money, okay, without really checking people's credit, okay, and so the banks just kept just lending money, okay, and then when Americans couldn't pay back, the businesses could not pay back their loans. People couldn't pay, and as a consequence, banks went bankrupt. And we see this line here, which is a very common picture in the Great Depression. People lined up to try to get money, okay? Because before the Great Depression, the government did not insure banks, okay? We'll learn that in the next lesson with the New Deal. So if you did not get your money on time, that's it, you lost all your money. So people would not put their money in banks. They would put money on a mattress because they were afraid that if the bank goes bankrupt, then they could lose all their money. Okay, so that was another cost. Okay, so overspending is one. Two is the banks are bankrupt. Okay, now the third reason, which is what we hear a lot, okay, is the stock market. Okay, So all the buying frenzy encouraged people to invest in the stock market. Well, what's a stock? Okay, did you know that you could be part owner of a business as big as McDonald's or some small business, unknown business? Instead of taking out a bank loan that charges interest, right? Because remember, when you take out a loan, the bank charges money on the interest. That's how banks make money. So if I go to the bank and they lend me $10,000, they'll give me 5 years to pay it, and then I have to pay back 10,000 or $12,000. So they make a profit of $2,000. So banks make money off interest rates. Okay. So right here. All right. Oh, I wrote a lot here. Okay, so businesses prefer to sell in the stock. Okay. Right here. Okay. So people felt that everything, it's this 1920s, everything's going to be good, the economy is going to go up. So many people started buying stocks. So let's say investors feel that the company is going to make money. If the company makes money, then you would sell the stock at a higher price than what you bought. For example, let's say you invested in Apple in 1970s when computers were not very popular. Let's say you bought 100 shares for $20. You invested $2,000. Okay. Today, the Apple company is making a great deal of money. Now that same very share is worth $300. If you sold the stock, you made $3,000. You made a profit of $28,000. Okay. So you have, I mean, you sometimes have extremes where, like Amazon. Amazon was $18 when they first started selling stocks, and now those stocks are worth over $2,000. So imagine the amount of money you made if you had bought these companies. Okay. So people like investing in the stock market because you have the potential of making millions of dollars. But conversely, you could say the opposite. So let's say you invested in a pharmaceutical company that invented a pill that you could lose weight without diet and exercise. So imagine everybody's going to want to be buying this pill. A lot of people. So you bought 100 shares for $200. Okay. But then on the news, you hear that the pill is causing many deaths. Uh-oh. Okay. So what's going to happen to that company? It's going to be destroyed. Okay. So what you just bought is now worthless. Okay. So you just lost all your money. So I'll give you another real life example. I was born in Ecuador, and in the 1970s, they discovered petroleum in a certain area, and so many people invested because they're like, "Oh, petroleum, that's a sure thing. You're going to make lots of money." So people invested their life earnings because they thought it was a sure thing. And then an earthquake came, and the petroleum scattered all over the ocean. So the people pretty much lost their money. So stocks is when you invest in a company. Okay, if the company goes good, the company makes money, then your stock is worth more. If the company goes bankrupt or loses money, then that stock is worth less. Okay, so in economics, you'll learn more about the stocks. Okay, so what happened during the Great Depression? Many people were investing in stock companies that were selling a great deal because they thought it was a sure thing. So if everybody's buying refrigerators, you're like, okay, I'm definitely going to invest in a company that sells refrigerator. They're making money, but here's the problem. They were not making real money in the 1920s. Everything was on credit, credit, credit. So basically, then the companies, when people couldn't pay back everything that they had spent, then the companies went bankrupt and people were not able to resell their stocks. So on Black Tuesday, which was the stock market crashed in 1929. Okay, so many investors committed suicide because they lost all their money. Okay, because many of the stocks were bought on credit. So today, can you purchase stocks using credit card? Yes, you could purchase stocks using credit cards online. You can, but now credit is more regulated. Okay, so here's a life lesson. When you get older, you have your credit score, which is like your grade. If you have good credit, you will be given more money and low interest rates. Okay, so you want to stay in the 800 to 700s. If you're the type of person who keeps buying things, and you don't pay your bills, then you're going to get bad credit. So what happens if you get bad credit? Everywhere you go, like you try to get a bank loan, you try to get a home loan, they look at your credit and they're like, oh no, this person's an F student or a D student. They're not going to make it. So you won't get any loans, and it'll be very difficult. Okay. So, and why does all this happen? Well, it happened because we learned our lessons from the Great Depression. Okay. So here we see, okay. So we see everything on credit. Look at this guy. Look at his beautiful car. Okay. And look how he's dressed. Okay. He was a stockbroker, but he's broke. Would anybody please buy this car for $100? Okay. And you know that car wasn't worth $100. Okay. If the 14 model was worth 250, this nice expensive car is going to be worth a lot more, but out of desperation because the stock market collapsed. Okay. So in the 1930s, we see that. We see well-dressed people in New York, okay, who lost their money in the stock market. Okay. So the fourth cause of the Great Depression were okay were was the farmers. Farmers had a really hard time during the Great Depression, and that relates to today. I was watching 60 Minutes, and they're talking about how many farmers, unfortunately, are committing suicide, and it's very sad what's going on. So, what happened in the 1930s? Okay, so tractors were invented way before the 1920s. Okay, but they again become more popular. Okay, and farmers they just overuse the land, especially during World War I, because they're producing food for Europe and the United States. Okay, so as a consequence of mass production of food, the high supply of crops forced farmers to sell their crops at very cheap. Okay, so you have a whole bunch of lettuces, let's say. Okay, you got to sell it. Okay. If you're making a lot of lettuce, if all the farmers are making a lot of fruits and vegetables, they have to sell it fast, because if not, it's going to rot. So what happened? The price was so cheap that farmers were not able to pay back. Okay. What they borrow for their mortgage on their farm, for their tractors. Okay. Yeah. For their tractors and their mortgage. Okay. So banks repossessed the farms, and many farmers were left homeless. Okay. So here we see, oh, there we go. So if we see exactly what I was talking about, the tractors. Let me see if I put a picture of a tractor. I did not put a picture of a tractor. Okay. So, I feel like I need to put an image. So I know people no, there it goes. It was right there. So those are tractors. Okay. So this made the production um, of crops even bigger. Okay. And we see here in 1910 how there's a whole hype. So just like Ford did the installment plans, the tractors did the same thing. And there was just this mass production. And you see a whole bunch of land. It's so much easier to farm when you have a tractor than just, doing it, using your back. So there was so much production and overproduction, and it just made the price collapse. Okay. So that created a huge problem for farmers, which leads to the fifth cause, which is a drought. Okay. That create a drought that was created. It created a dust bowl. Okay. In the Great Plains. All right. So let me show you pictures of the dust bowl. So this is incredible. So land, just what we're learning today is that you need to take care of nature. Okay. If you do not take care of nature, it will come back and bite you in the booty, just like what's going on today. So this overproduction of the soil turned the soil to this, from this beautiful black, rich, nutrient base to sand, because you're overworking the land. So you have all this sand covering. If you get a chance, watch the video, and it tells you how people lived in this huge sand ball, dust bowl, and some people got buried alive in this dust bowl. So it's incredible to see the images of people living in during this time. So you see homes being buried, Okay, people running, trying to get away. Many of them went to California. Okay, so it was a very difficult time for farmers. Okay, and this took place in this part of the United States, in the red area you see where it mostly happened. So people had to run. Many people ran to California because they were farmers and they figured they could be farmers in California. You still have some areas of California where people have the Oklahoma accent, and that came about from the 1930s Dust Bowl. Okay, so the sixth cause of the Great Depression was that um, the European countries did not pay back. Do you remember during World War I, we kept lending them supplies, giving them a whole bunch of things, and we kept saying, "Well, okay, pay us back when you can, pay us back after the war." So the 1920s, this was the idea like, "Oh, the Europeans owe us so much money, we're so rich." Yeah, guess what? They never paid back. Okay, and the Europeans were like, "How are we going to pay back if our economy is destroyed?" So it's kind of like lending a broke friend money and expecting them to pay back. They're not going to be able to do it. Okay. Okay, and the seventh thing, of course, was the unemployment. So during World War I, during any war, there's a lot of employment because you're making guns, you're making equipment. So you have this whole need. Everybody's working. Remember, we have the great migration of African Americans from the South to the North in cities to work in these factories. Okay, so the war, they're just producing everything that you need, and then all of a sudden the war ends. So what happens? Boom, the economy collapses. Okay. So there was a great deal of unemployment also during the Great Depression. So there was many factors that affected it. Okay. So the eighth reason is it just was not the United States, it was the whole world. So here you see the United States, United Kingdom, Belgium, France, Argentina, Germany, Italia, all these countries, Japan, and you see that the economy, okay, after World War II, after World War I, excuse me, the economy goes up, but then it starts collapsing. Okay. Because all this right here was fake prosperity. It wasn't real because everything was on credit. Okay. It was not based on real money. Okay. And then we see the economy goes back up. Why? Because the war, World War II. Okay. Um, and then people start working again. So this is what I mentioned before. It's kind of sad, but it's true that sometimes governments create war because there's unemployment rate, and they figured, okay, well, war is perfect because what? One, it kills people, so you don't have to worry about giving everybody a job, and then two, you have jobs for people. So it's sad but true. Okay, and this is something that's very common today. There's an uneven distribution of wealth. So here we see, let's take a look at the cartoon right here. Okay. So we have the banking system, right? And then we have the government and the people. And you see the people here are just giving the bones. And the banking is giving everything. And the government is giving everything to the banks and the rich people. And again, this is a report in 60 Minutes, which was very sad. I was um, very distraught by it because they're talking about farmers killing themselves, and the government is giving billions of dollars to rich corporations, to like Tyson and 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 these huge farmers and huge companies that have farms, but they're not even in the land. They just have other people. They just take money from the poor, basically. So you have people from like New York City and Miami who are not even farmers, and they received millions of dollars, um, which should have gone to the actual farmers. But that's this is one thing that Republicans do argue about, and they're right. It's that okay? In, let's have money to help people, but where did the tax money end up going to? The rich. Okay. So we see that right now with the bailout, with the stimulus checks. And you have companies like that burger company, what is it, something Shack, that received millions of dollars. And you have the mom and pop stores struggling, and they haven't received anything. So unfortunately, the government does do that sometimes when you're like, okay, they're doing stimulus packages, they're giving money, but is that money actually reaching who it is supposed to, the people who are struggling? Okay. And that is something we have in common today. And it's very frustrating, something that has gone out throughout history and continues today, unfortunately. Okay. So here we have Coolidge, a Republican president before Hoover. And basically, when the economy started to show signs that uh, that it wasn't strong, what do Republicans usually do? They give money to businesses. They have this trickle down mentality that if you give money to businesses, they would create jobs. Okay. History shows us it doesn't work that way. And that's my opinion. I'm sure somebody would argue against that. Okay. 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 And the 10th cause of the Great Depression was the Federal Reserve. Okay, so what is the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve is the national bank of the United States, and it controls inflation and recessions. What is inflation? Basically, inflation is the general and progressive increase of price. Okay, but it's good when everyone's making more money, right? No. Okay, so let's say everybody wins the lotto, $2 million. What would happen? So most people go out and spend their money, right? And when stores know that everybody has more money, what are the price? The prices are going to go up. Okay. So even though people have more money, they could buy less things because the money has lost its value. Okay. So when there's too much money in the economy circulating, the economy busts. Okay. So think of the balloon, right? Okay. So if you see a balloon, right, someone's blowing a balloon and you know they're putting too much air, you're like, wait, stop, because it's going to pop. Okay. The same thing. Or sometimes I like to think of, a baby. Okay. You want to give the baby food so the baby's nice and healthy, but you don't want to give it too much food that the baby develops problems. Okay. So here's a good picture that shows inflation. So in 1998, if you had $20, you may be able to fill your whole cart with food, right? In 2005, $20 will maybe they will buy you less, but they will still buy you something. And in 2013, what can you buy for 20 bucks? Okay. Maybe a little, like one chicken, and that's it. Okay. So $100 today is very different than $100. Okay. Back in the days. Okay. So that's inflation. All right. So too much money makes the value go down. So in the 1920s, there was a great amount of overspending, which created inflation. Inflation leads to recession. Recession triggers depression. So when there's inflation, the Fed is supposed to burn or hold back the money. Did you know that? Did you know that the federal government, when every time they see there's too much money, it is the job of the Fed or the Federal Reserve to hold back the money. And there's different ways. It's called monetary policy. That's a whole different lesson that'll take forever. But the federal government puts money in and out of the economy to regulate it. So again, look at the metaphor of the baby. Okay, the baby's hungry, you feed it. Okay, keeps the baby healthy. If you don't feed the baby, that baby's gonna have problems. Okay, so the economy. Think of the baby as the economy. You want to give the baby food. You want to give him, money. Circulate the money. But when there's too much, you have to stop. Okay, because if not, then the baby's going to have problems. Or if you want to think of the metaphor, the balloon, okay, you want to blow enough air in the balloon to keep it, bouncing, the economy bouncing, but you don't want to put too much that the economy collapses, okay? So during the Great Depression, the Fed should have, in the 1920s, when they saw all the inflation, all the overspending, all the credit, they saw any economist would have told you, you need to hold back. Because if you don't hold back, if you let people just borrow money, it's going to pop. And it did pop. Okay. All right. So right here. So what are the effects of the Great Depression? Okay. So these are all the causes. Okay. There are 10 causes of the Great Depression. Okay. And just evaluate how is that common today. Okay. How are the causes today? Let me just see. How is it related to today? So have people overspend? Yeah, people did overspend. That's the first one. Okay, the second one, banks. Well, here's the thing. Now the government does insure banks, but it's a double-edged sword because people feel safe to put the money in the bank, and at the same time, banks feel like, oh, I could just go bankrupt, and the government is going to save my butt. So every time I lose money or I don't make a good deal, the government is going to come in and insure my losses. So yeah, it is a double-edged sword. Okay. The stock market, we do see the stock market right now crashing, okay, because many businesses are going broke because of the COVID-19. Okay. The overworking of land, yes, okay. We are not taking care of our planet. We're not taking care of the land, and Mother Nature is letting us know. So what happened with COVID-19 right now? The Mother Nature is kind of healing itself because people are not driving their cars. There's less pollution. Okay, farmers were hit hard during the Great Depression, and farmers today are getting hit hard. Okay, because they're having difficulties getting money, getting food. Uh, some of the crops are being destroyed. Okay, and this is not just affecting the US. COVID-19 is affecting the whole world. Okay. There is a great amount of unemployment, just like during the Great Depression today is the same. Okay. The whole world is being affected. And we still have this huge problem. It's really irritating me how a lot of this money that the government is making is not going to where it should be going, which is usually what happens with taxes. Okay. So you have hospitals. Okay. So each hospital is getting like $800. What is that going to do? Okay. So why are big corporations getting billions of dollars and each hospital getting $800 when they're the ones who really need it? Okay. And again, this is our tax money. How's the government distributing it is very unfair. Okay. And then the Fed, okay? How's the Fed reacting to what's going on right now? So the Fed has lowered the interest rate, is trying to encourage spending because people are not spending because they're afraid. All right. So what are the effects of the Great Depression? Okay, so we have a lot of stuff in common with the Great Depression today, unfortunately. Okay. But we have Hoover bills. So people cannot pay their house. So what happens when you can't pay back the bank? The bank takes your house. Okay. So what did people do? A lot of times they would just go to the park um, and with cardboard boxes or wooden planks and just create these houses. And you look um, images of these Hoovervilles, okay, they're man-made homes, okay, because people got kicked out. What are you going to do? Okay, really sad all over the U.S. You have people just, get any empty lot, okay, and form the houses. So today we see tents too. Now is we don't do the wooden houses, but we have like the tents, and we see a lot of homeless people, uh, homeless encampment or transient people rather. Okay, so that was also popular during the Great Depression. Food lines, okay, huge food lines. So today, okay, you see the food lines. Bank. Okay. Within their cars, people in their cars, and then they have to get food. Okay, so it's huge. Look at these long lines to get food. Okay, the same like the Great Depression, but they're not in cars. Okay, so we have that very sad situation too. Okay, the unemployment, okay, rate goes up. Okay, so we see this here. How many people do not have jobs? Okay, so in the 1930s. All right, and here this is when FDR becomes president and he creates all these jobs, which is our next topic, the New Deal. Okay, uh, and how? Okay, sorry. So here we see, look at all these people who don't have jobs. Okay, so it's at 25%. So there is a lot of unemployment. Now, I don't know what's the unemployment rate right now? I should have looked this up. Okay. So I don't know, but I think it's pretty high. Okay, so according to Fortune, it's 20%. Okay, and here we have 25% in 1933. Okay, so we are very close to the Great Depression. Okay, Dust Bowl. So imagine you have this huge dust coming at you. So what do? Yeah, you get in your car and you run. Okay. So you have families running, and that's one of the videos it shows families running to get for safety. And here we see the map, okay, of these little areas here where it was very severe wind erosion, and they just ran. Many of them ran here to California. So in California, we have many people from middle of the United States in the 1930s just trying to get jobs, and they go to these areas because they're farmers, and they figured, okay, I farm here now, I could go farm over there. And there's a lot of discrimination. If you read The Grapes of Wrath, that it has to do with those farmers. Okay. Also, you have a lot of suicide rates going because of the Great Depression. Okay. All right, so going back, so I hope this gives you a general idea of what the Great Depression is, right? So you could say, oh, the Great Depression, it was a terrible time. The economy collapsed. First it was Hoover, then it was Franklin Delano Roosevelt or FDR, and then it happened in 1930. So you got the who, what, when, where. It was in the United States, but it was all over the world too. So you just could answer that, and then watch these videos. They're very interesting, and then just describe how your life would be. So I would put something like, oh, if I was a farmer, it would be terrible because I would have to run because a dust bowl destroyed my land. Or you could say, I would struggle as a Mexican American because people automatically, when the economy is bad, there's a lot of racism towards African Americans, towards Mexican Americans, towards all racial groups. Okay, so you could put anything like that. And then what does it remind you of? Oh, there's a lot of things you could say. Okay, in here you could say, or the unemployment rate. Okay, the unemployment rate. There are so many things in common. Okay, there's the unemployment rate. Okay, today is 20%, right? And then back in the Great Depression, it was 25%. That's not that much of a difference. Okay, there's the food lines. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff. Farmers struggling. Okay, so there's a lot of unfortunately, a lot of things in common with the Great Depression. Okay. And why do we learn? Why are we learning about the Great Depression? To be sad? No. So then we learn, okay, we could learn how to fix the economy, how to get back on our feet. Okay. Hello. Okay. So throughout history, and that's another thing, okay, throughout history we see the strength of the human spirit. Okay, humans have gone through a lot of hardship, but they learn. Okay, they adopt, and they move on, and they become better because of it. So we're so much better because of the Great Depression. I mean, it's unfortunate, but now we have insurance and banks. Now we have unemployment checks. We learned. Okay, for those of us who learn from history. Okay, and then four. Okay, what are your thoughts about the Great Depression? What do you wonder about it? What did you like? What did you not like? Obviously, there's more unlike what you don't like because it's a bad time period. But okay, just give me your thoughts. Let me know that you understood the general idea of the Great Depression. So I hope this knowledge has served you. I hope uh, we learn from it. Okay, especially during this time right now. Remember what FDR said, right? What did FDR say? We have nothing to fear but fear itself. So I think that's a good quote for right now. Okay, take care of yourself.